Ethan had seen war in many forms, but nothing in his years as a human commander could prepare him for the alien court of Kalara. The planet's surface shimmered with colors that humans had no names for: vast mountains of crystal, rivers that reflected light like liquid metal, and forests where the trees seemed almost aware of those who walked among them. Yet despite its beauty, Kalara was a world of strict codes and deadly politics. One wrong move, one careless word, and a foreigner could end up as a memory the Empire chose to erase. Ethan had been sent as an envoy, not just as a soldier. The Human Federation had been negotiating peace with the Kalara Empire for decades, but only now had an opportunity presented itself for a lasting alliance. His mission was simple in theory: gain the trust of the Warlord Zyra and her court, and secure cooperation in trade and military intelligence. In practice, it was a labyrinth of rituals, hidden agendas, and the subtle menace of alien expectation. The court hall itself was immense. Towers of carved stone rose like fingers to the sky, and the walls were etched with the history of battles, victories, and conquests stretching back millennia. Zyra sat upon her throne, an imposing figure whose armor seemed fused to her very skin. Her presence radiated authority and danger, the kind that demanded respect and made men, and aliens alike, second-guess their words. Her eyes, sharp and calculating, assessed Ethan the moment he stepped forward. He knelt, as the customs demanded, though it felt unnatural to a human mind. Zyra's voice, deep and resonant, cut through the air. "Commander Ethan of Earth, you have crossed countless light years. Tell me, what makes your species worthy of my attention?" Ethan kept his posture steady. He had trained for diplomatic pressure, for intimidation, and for situations where his life could end in a single heartbeat. "I seek not to claim your attention, Warlord," he replied calmly. "I come to build trust, to prove that humans can be allies in the challenges ahead." There was silence. The court watched him closely, their multi-jointed limbs and glowing eyes fixed on the human. Then Zyra leaned forward, a faint smile twisting the corners of her mouth. "We do not trust easily," she said, "and we do not forgive weakness. Perhaps a demonstration of your intentions is in order." Before Ethan could react, doors at the far end of the hall opened. Guards brought forward a figure draped in silken robes. When she stepped into the light, Ethan saw the scars first, long, jagged lines across her arms, neck, and face. Her eyes, a striking violet, flicked toward him with a mixture of fear, defiance, and something he couldn't yet name. "This is my daughter, Lyra," Zyra announced. "She has suffered in the wars my empire has fought. She is gifted to you, Commander, as a token of respect and as proof of your trustworthiness." The court murmured, a wave of astonishment washing through the alien diplomats. Gifted children were not unheard of in the Empire, but usually they were either heirs to lesser houses or symbols of allegiance. This was different. This was a human receiving someone the Empire had called a prize. Ethan's mind raced. Lyra's scars told a story of survival and trauma, not ownership. Her posture was tense, shoulders rigid, as though she were ready to flee or strike at any moment. Her glare was fierce, challenging him silently. Ethan knew the right choice was not to accept her as a gift in the traditional sense. To do so would strip her of autonomy, and it would betray everything he believed as a human commander. He took a deep breath. "Warlord Zyra," he said firmly, "I will not accept your daughter as property. She is not a tool or a prize. She is a person, and I will treat her with the respect she deserves." The silence in the hall deepened. Whispers erupted. Some of the council members exchanged incredulous glances. Humans were considered naive at best, arrogant at worst. To refuse a gift, especially one meant to honor him, was almost unthinkable. Yet Ethan did not flinch. His eyes met Zyra's. "If she wishes to accompany me, it will be because she chooses to, not because she is commanded to." Lyra's violet eyes widened slightly. For the first time since entering the hall, her rigid posture softened just a fraction. She had expected fear, submission, or anger. Instead, she found calmness and clarity. Zyra's expression remained unreadable, though the tension in her shoulders hinted at surprise. "You speak boldly, human," she said slowly. "Many of my advisors would see this as insult, yet you may have a point. Strength is not only in dominance. Perhaps there is merit in your perspective." Ethan inclined his head respectfully. "Respect is earned through actions, not declarations. If you wish to test my intentions, allow me to demonstrate them through deeds, not words." Lyra remained silent, her curiosity piqued. She had been handed over as a political gesture, expected to feel fear and resentment. But this human did something no alien had done before. He treated her as an equal. In the following days, Ethan and Lyra were not formally bound by any ceremonial ties, but necessity brought them together. Ethan insisted that she accompany him to the training grounds, not as a subordinate, but as a partner. He observed her carefully, noting her agility and tactical mind despite her injuries. She had endured more than most warriors her age and emerged sharper, though wary. Their first challenge came sooner than either expected. On the second day, an explosion rocked the eastern district of the capital. Rebel insurgents had breached the perimeter, aiming to kidnap a high-ranking council member. Ethan and Lyra moved quickly, coordinating with the Imperial Guards. Lyra's instincts were remarkable. She anticipated movements, guided troops, and even helped Ethan devise a counter-strategy on the fly. By the time the skirmish ended, the insurgents were either captured or had fled. The council was stunned. The human and the alien girl had acted in perfect synchronization. Whispers in the halls turned into conversations, and the term "unexpected alliance" began to circulate. Later that evening, Ethan and Lyra found themselves alone in the observation deck, overlooking the shimmering forests of Kylara. Lyra sat quietly, her hands folded as Ethan spoke softly. "You fought well today. You have a sharp mind and a strong heart. None of that has anything to do with what others call your scars." Lyra looked away, struggling to meet his gaze. "I am not used to being seen as more than broken," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "Everyone expected me to be weak. Everyone expected me to be a tool for someone else's plan." Ethan crouched to her level. "Then let me be the first to see you as you are, a person, strong, intelligent, and capable of choices. No one should define you by your injuries or by what the world wants you to be." For the first time in years, Lyra allowed herself a small smile, fragile but genuine. She realized that this human was not like the others. His strength was not in domination, but in understanding. In the following days, Ethan and Lyra trained together. He taught her human methods of leadership, emphasizing empathy, strategy, and collaboration. In return, she shared the Kylara tactics she had learned since childhood, patterns of battle, political maneuvers, and the inner workings of the Empire's councils. Together, they formed a bond that bridged their species and experiences. Yet even as trust grew, the court watched closely. Many council members viewed their relationship with suspicion, believing Ethan to be manipulating Lyra for influence. Others began to question the rigid traditions of their empire, seeing the humans' respect for the girl as a challenge to the old ways. One evening, as the twin moons of Kylara rose in the violet sky, Lyra approached Ethan quietly. "Do you really believe a human can teach an alien empire anything about honor?" she asked, skepticism in her voice. Ethan smiled faintly. "Not just honor," he said, "but about courage, loyalty, and respect. Strength is more than weapons and armies. Sometimes it's in the choices we make and how we treat those who cannot defend themselves." Lyra considered his words, feeling a spark of hope she hadn't felt since the accident that had scarred her. Perhaps the world could be different. Perhaps she could be more than what the Empire expected of her. Their bond deepened, and whispers in the court began to shift. The story of the human who refused to take a daughter as a gift and who treated her as an equal spread like wildfire. Some laughed, some scoffed, but many watched in secret, curious to see how this unusual partnership would evolve. Ethan knew the path ahead would not be easy. The empire was vast, traditions were rigid, and not everyone would accept change. But he had made his choice, and Lyra had begun to make hers. Together, they would face challenges that no one could foresee, and in doing so, perhaps they could reshape not just their destinies, but the future of the entire Kalara Empire. By the end of the first month, the court could no longer ignore the impact of their alliance. Lyra had grown stronger, not just physically but mentally, her confidence blooming under Ethan's guidance. And Ethan, in turn, learned the intricate subtleties of Kalara politics and strategy. They were no longer just a human and an alien girl. They were a team, a force capable of challenging even the most entrenched beliefs of the Empire. When Warlord Zyra summoned them again to the throne room, the human and the alien stood side by side, prepared for whatever judgment awaited. Zyra's eyes scanned the pair, noting the confidence and unity between them. The Empire had given Ethan what they thought would be a simple gift, a political gesture, but instead, it had forged a partnership that no one, not even the Warlord, could have predicted. Ethan bowed slightly, acknowledging Zyra with respect, while Lyra lifted her chin, poised and resolute. For the first time, the Empire saw that strength was not only in the scars one bore but in the courage to rise above them. And in that moment, the stage was set. The Empire would soon learn that the human who had been given a gift was not there to take, but to awaken the potential that lay within the scarred daughter, and through her, to challenge the very heart of Kalara's traditions. The sun rose over Kylara in a blaze of violet and gold, casting long shadows across the crystalline towers of the capital. Ethan woke early, as he always did, to the quiet hum of the city awakening. Beside him, Lyra was already moving, her steps careful but purposeful. The scars on her arms and face were still visible, but the way she carried herself now spoke of resilience, of determination born from pain and experience. Ethan had grown accustomed to the alien world, though it still held surprises at every turn. The forest shimmered in colors that shifted with the morning light, and the air vibrated faintly with energy. Humans had never encountered such phenomena, yet Ethan learned to move through them as if they were as natural as breathing. Today, however, was not about exploration. It was about preparation. The Empire's court was full of whispers, and whispers had a way of turning into challenges. Lyra approached him with a tablet of data from the previous day's skirmish. There were gaps in the defense lines, she said, her voice steady, betraying no hint of hesitation. If the insurgents knew the terrain better, we could have lost more than just reputation. Next time, we need scouts on the northern ridge. They're hiding a small group there, maybe 20 at most, but enough to cause chaos. Ethan nodded, impressed despite himself. She had a sharp tactical mind, honed not just by training but by experience in battle. Good observation, he said. We'll place units strategically. But I want you to help me coordinate, not just fight. Leaders need to see the battlefield, not only react to it. Lyra tilted her head, studying him. You really believe humans can teach Kalara strategy? She asked. There was no mockery in her tone, only curiosity. I don't just believe it, Ethan replied. I've seen it. Strategy is universal. Understanding the mind of the enemy, predicting their actions, inspiring those around you, it doesn't matter the species. Principles remain the same. Over the next several days, the pair worked closely. Ethan taught Lyra human ways of organization, emphasizing collaboration, morale, and long-term planning. Lyra shared the Kalara methods, how soldiers moved silently through crystal forests, the timing of energy pulses in the capital's power grid, the intricate hierarchy of the council. Together, they began to craft tactics that combined the best of both worlds. It wasn't long before their first true test arrived. One morning, scouts reported unusual activity near the outer sectors. A rogue faction had gathered forces and was preparing to strike. The humans and aliens in the capital were tense, and council members whispered about the human and the scarred daughter leading this defense. Some predicted disaster, others saw potential in the unlikely duo. Ethan and Lyra moved swiftly to the command center, a circular platform overlooking the city. The floor was etched with maps and holographic projections, showing troop movements, supply lines, and likely points of attack. Lyra stepped forward, pointing to the northern ridge. They've positioned themselves here. Their leader is experienced. They may try to draw our forces into a trap. Ethan studied the map. If we split our units, we risk being overwhelmed, but if we concentrate, we leave the city vulnerable. He paused, thinking. We'll use deception. We'll make it look like we're reinforcing the northern ridge, but instead, we'll flank them from the east, where the terrain favors us. Lyra's eyes widened slightly. It was a human tactic she had never considered, simple yet effective. It could work, she admitted, but we'll need speed and coordination. Half a misstep and the entire city could be lost. The battle that followed was swift, precise, and unlike anything the Empire had witnessed before. Lyra led a contingent of elite soldiers, moving silently through shadowed paths and striking key targets. Ethan coordinated reinforcements, predicting enemy movements and adapting to their attempts to counterattack. Together, human intuition and Kalara skill created a force that was both unpredictable and unstoppable. By the end of the engagement, the insurgents were defeated, scattered across the ridge and captured. Casualties were minimal compared to the potential losses, and the council watched in astonishment. The human and the scarred daughter had not only protected the city, but demonstrated a level of leadership and strategy that challenged centuries of tradition. After the battle, Ethan found Lyra sitting quietly on the edge of the city wall, her gaze fixed on the horizon. "You were brilliant today," he said softly, approaching her. Lyra shook her head. "I only followed your plan," she said, though there was a hint of pride in her voice. "Without you, we might have lost," Ethan smiled. "We didn't win because of one person. We won because we worked together. Strength isn't about who's strongest alone, it's about how we combine our strengths." She turned to him, eyes reflecting the light of the twin suns. "You really believe that humans and aliens can be equals?" she asked, almost as if testing him. "I do," Ethan said firmly. "And I think the Empire will learn it too, though it will take time. Change always takes time." The next few weeks were filled with planning, training, and quiet observation. Ethan and Lyra became a team, trusted by soldiers on both sides. They shared meals in the mess halls, studied tactics late into the night, and occasionally Lyra would ask questions about Earth, its people, its wars, its culture. Ethan answered honestly, never hiding the flaws of humanity, but also emphasizing its resilience and creativity. It was during one such night that Lyra finally spoke about her past. "I was 13 when the rebels attacked our border fort," she said, voice low. "I watched my friends fall, my mother screaming, and I couldn't save anyone. I survived, but they said my scars were a reminder of failure." Ethan listened carefully, offering no judgment. "Survivors are not failures," he said gently. "Scars aren't proof of weakness. They're proof of survival, of courage. What you endured, it made you stronger, not lesser." She looked at him, a mixture of disbelief and relief in her eyes. "You really mean that?" "I do," he said. "And I'll spend every day showing you that your value is not defined by what others think, but by who you are and what you do." Over time, Lyra's confidence grew. Her movements became more fluid, her decisions more assured. She began taking the lead in training drills, often surprising Ethan with her insights. Together, they experimented with new formations, blending human unpredictability with Kalara precision. Each success reinforced their bond, each failure taught them lessons they shared openly. But not everyone in the court was pleased. Some council members saw their alliance as a threat to tradition. A human guiding the daughter of a warlord, one whispered bitterly to a colleague. This is unprecedented. It undermines our authority. Others were intrigued. Perhaps there is merit in this partnership, another said quietly. They act not for personal gain but for the greater good. Maybe the old ways are not the only ways. The tension simmered, a constant undercurrent to their daily lives. Ethan and Lyra were aware of it, yet they refused to let fear dictate their actions. They focused instead on preparation, on training, and on understanding the Empire better than anyone else. One afternoon, reports came of a larger threat, a coalition of rebel factions uniting to challenge the warlord's authority directly. The council debated, voices raised, accusations flying. Ethan and Lyra stood apart, analyzing the data, strategizing quietly. They realized that the rebels' plan was audacious, simultaneous attacks on multiple sectors to divide the city's defenses. Ethan turned to Lyra. We can't fight them head-on. Too many unknowns. We need to anticipate their moves, cut off their communication, and force them into mistakes. Lyra nodded. We'll need every soldier we have, plus volunteers from neighboring districts. If we coordinate properly, we can turn their numbers against them. The preparations took days. Ethan and Lyra oversaw drills, simulations, and reconnaissance. Soldiers learned to trust their instincts, but also to trust each other. They were no longer simply following orders. They were thinking, adapting, and executing as a unified force. When the battle finally erupted, it was unlike any Kalara had seen. Rebels advanced with precision, but Ethan and Lyra's forces were ready. Ambushes struck from unexpected angles, supply lines were cut, and communication was disrupted. Every move the rebels made had already been considered, every potential advantage neutralized. Through it all, Ethan stayed close to Lyra, coordinating, observing, and adapting. Her decisions became faster, sharper, more confident. She moved among the soldiers like a shadow, her voice carrying authority and reassurance. Together, they were unstoppable. By the end of the day, the rebels were defeated, their forces scattered and leader captured. Casualties were minimal considering the scale of the assault. The council watched in stunned silence, unable to comprehend how a human and a scarred daughter had achieved what decades of imperial tradition could not. As the sun set, Lyra and Ethan stood atop the city walls once more, overlooking the capital. The battle had been won, but the lessons were far from over. They will never see you the same way again, Ethan said quietly. Lyra's eyes reflected the fading light. And you, will they accept you as a leader? Ethan shrugged. I don't lead by title or by fear. I lead by choice, by action. Some will understand, some will resist. That is the way of the world. She nodded thoughtfully, her expression serious yet contemplative. For the first time, she felt truly equal, truly seen. Not as a gift, not as a tool, but as a person capable of shaping her own destiny. And so, with the city safe and their partnership strengthened, Ethan and Lyra prepared for the challenges yet to come. The Empire was watching, waiting to see if this human and the scarred daughter could continue to defy expectation, to change tradition, and perhaps to teach a galaxy that true strength came not from domination, but from courage, respect, and unity. The twin moons of Kalara rose, high above the capital, bathing the city in silvery light that reflected off the crystalline towers. The air was calm, almost deceptive in its serenity. Ethan stood on the balcony of the command center, watching the lights of the city shimmer below. Lyra joined him silently, her presence steady, her expression thoughtful. The last battle had changed more than just the city. It had shifted the balance of respect, trust, and authority within the Empire. Council members whispered endlessly about the human who refused to take a daughter as a gift, the daughter who had once been considered broken yet now stood as a leader in her own right. and the strange alliance that had toppled rebel factions with such precision and minimal loss. Some were outraged, fearing a loss of tradition. Others were intrigued, seeing in their actions a potential path forward. Change, they realized, was coming whether they accepted it or not. Ethan turned to Lyra. "Tomorrow, we will present a plan to the council," he said. "A way to strengthen the empire, unify its people, and prevent further rebellion. It will not be easy. There will be opposition." Lyra nodded, her violet eyes shining with determination. "I know," she said quietly, "but we've proven ourselves before. We can do it again." The morning arrived, and the council chamber was filled to capacity. Warlord Zyra presided from her throne, her expression unreadable. Council members and diplomats from various districts watched with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. The chamber had never hosted a human in such a central role, nor had it witnessed a daughter stand beside a man not related to her by blood or politics with such authority. Ethan and Lyra stepped forward. Ethan addressed the council first, his voice calm but firm. "Esteemed members of the Kalara Council, I do not come seeking power. I do not come to claim titles or alter traditions for my own gain. I am here as an ally, to share strategies and ideas that can strengthen your empire, protect your people, and honor those who serve it." He gestured to Lyra, who stood tall beside him. "This is Lyra, daughter of Warlord Zyra. She has endured hardships and emerged resilient. She is capable, intelligent, and brave. Together, we propose a path forward that values not only strength in battle, but also the wisdom and cooperation of all citizens." The room fell silent. Many council members exchanged glances, some skeptical, some intrigued. No one had ever spoken like this in the Empire. Words were usually weapons, layered with obligation, threat, and hierarchy. Here, there was honesty, clarity, and respect. Lyra stepped forward. "The Empire has relied on fear and authority for generations," she began. "It has created warriors, yes, but it has also created division. Rebellion does not come from weakness. It comes from those who feel unheard, unseen, or used. We propose a system where all voices can contribute, where leadership earns loyalty through respect and action rather than intimidation." Murmurs rose among the council members. Some bristled at her audacity, seeing it as insolence. Others leaned forward, captivated by the clarity and courage in her voice. Ethan continued, outlining detailed strategies for defense, communication, and governance. He drew on human tactics adapted for Kalara terrain, combining them with Lyra's knowledge of local customs and military history. Together, they presented a vision of an empire that could be stronger, safer, and more united. It was bold, ambitious, and unprecedented. After hours of debate, arguments, and counterpoints, Warlord Zyra finally rose. The room fell silent, every eye fixed on her. "I have watched this human and my daughter," she said slowly. "I have seen them act not for personal gain but for the good of the empire. I have seen courage, intelligence, and honor demonstrated in ways I never imagined. Perhaps it is time to reconsider what leadership truly means." A wave of astonishment swept the chamber. To have the warlord publicly acknowledge the worth of a human and her scarred daughter in such terms was unheard of. For centuries, tradition had dictated the boundaries of power, but now the definition of strength itself was being questioned. Over the following weeks, Ethan and Lyra implemented their reforms. Soldiers were trained not only in combat but in strategy, teamwork, and communication. Citizens were given more voice in local governance. Decisions were made collaboratively, blending human concepts of accountability and consultation with Kalara methods of precision and order. Lyra thrived in her new role. She visited districts, listened to concerns, and acted decisively where needed. Her scars, once symbols of weakness, had become marks of survival and resilience. Children and young soldiers began to look up to her, inspired not just by her skill but by her courage and integrity. Ethan, meanwhile, continued to advise and support her, remaining ever vigilant. He knew that tradition dies slowly and that there would always be opposition. Yet, he also saw hope, the hope that a human and an alien could demonstrate a better way, one that relied not on fear, but on respect, understanding, and unity. One evening, as they walked through the city gardens, Lyra spoke softly. "Do you ever wonder if the Empire will truly change, or if we are just a fleeting moment in their history?" Ethan looked at her, his gaze steady. "Change is never immediate and the old ways die slowly. But we have started something that cannot be undone. We have shown them that there is another way, and as long as people remember what we've done, the seeds of change will grow." She smiled faintly. "I never thought I would feel hopeful again." "Hope is not given," Ethan said. "It is earned, built, and nurtured. You've earned it, Lyra, and so has everyone who follows you." News of their success spread throughout Kylara and neighboring systems. Stories of the human who refused a gift of a daughter, of the scarred girl who became a leader, and of their alliance reshaping an empire reached far and wide. Allies and enemies alike took notice. Some attempted subtle challenges, trying to exploit the cracks in the new system, but Ethan and Lyra anticipated them, adapting strategies and addressing issues before they escalated. The human's influence did not go unnoticed by Warlord Zyra. She observed them closely, sometimes with stern authority, sometimes with quiet approval. She saw how Ethan's guidance allowed Lyra to grow, and how Lyra's bravery and intellect complemented Ethan's experience and insight. The two of them together became a symbol of unity that transcended species, scars, and tradition. One night, after a long day of council meetings and inspections, Ethan and Lyra stood on the balcony again, gazing at the horizon. The twin moons reflected in the rivers below, and the city seemed to glow with newfound life. "Do you ever think about what will come next?" Lyra asked. Ethan smiled faintly. "The future is never certain, but I know this: we've changed something fundamental here. People have seen what respect, courage, and partnership can do. They've seen that strength isn't just in weapons or scars or bloodlines. It's in choice, in action, and in the way we treat each other." Lyra nodded, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. For the first time, she felt fully seen, fully respected, and fully capable. She was no longer defined by her scars or by what the Empire expected of her, but by her actions and her courage. The next months were filled with challenges, but also triumphs. Ethan and Lyra continued to demonstrate that humans and aliens could work together, that leadership could inspire rather than intimidate, and that even centuries-old empires could adapt when guided by wisdom, empathy, and strength. Eventually, Warlord Zyra called a formal assembly to honor their achievements. The chamber was filled with soldiers, diplomats, and citizens, all eager to witness the acknowledgement of the human and the scarred daughter. Zyra's voice carried through the hall. "Ethan of Earth, you have shown courage, wisdom, and integrity. You have challenged our traditions, but you have done so with respect and honor. For this, you are recognized not as a foreigner but as a trusted ally of Kylara." The chamber erupted in astonishment and applause. Humans had rarely been so honored in alien courts, and the act signified a profound shift in perception. Lyra stepped forward, her presence commanding yet graceful. "I stand here not only as a survivor but as a leader forged by choice, courage, and guidance. Ethan has shown me what it means to be respected, valued, and empowered. Together, we will continue to build an empire where strength is measured not by fear, but by honor, unity, and action." The applause that followed shook the hall. For the first time in centuries, the empire felt the possibility of true progress. Traditions were not discarded, but they were reinterpreted through the lens of fairness, respect, and collaboration. As the ceremony ended, Ethan and Lyra stood together, looking out over the city. The Empire had been given a glimpse of something extraordinary, what could happen when courage, empathy, and partnership guided action. Lyra turned to him, eyes shining. "We did it. We really did it." Ethan nodded, a faint smile on his lips. "No, you did it. I just helped you see it in yourself." She laughed softly, a sound that carried hope and relief. "Then perhaps the Empire has learned something about humans after all." And so, in a world of crystal towers, violet skies, and ancient traditions, a human and a scarred daughter had not only survived, they had reshaped the Empire. Through courage, respect, and partnership, they proved that true strength was not in domination or fear, but in the choices one made and the integrity one upheld. The Empire had given Ethan a daughter as a gift, expecting compliance and ownership, but in return, they received something far greater, a vision of unity, honor, and the power of humanity to inspire even the most rigid of civilizations. The stars above Kylara shimmered brightly that night, and somewhere, deep in the heart of the Empire, traditions began to bend, hearts began to open, and a new chapter in history began, one guided by courage, partnership, and the enduring light of respect.